Alright, so this is the guide for Enhancement Shaman in the War Within in Mythic Plus. I have been doing a lot of beta dungeons. I probably played more Enhancement than anyone else, and I've seen a lot of misinformation and misconceptions about this spec. Alright, so these are the talents you're going to be using in every dungeon. It's a hybrid build. You're playing Lava Lash talents, but you're also playing Tempest Strikes, and you're playing big Ascendance and all the talents under Ascendance. And I believe this is the best build in every dungeon. And the idea behind this build is because of the Stormbringer Hero Tree. Your spenders are incredibly valued, and they are the highest priority. And all you're doing with this tree is generating as much Maelstrom as possible, to spend as much as possible, and to get as many Tempests as possible. Alright, so I will quickly go over the base Enhanced Shaman rotation. You have a resource called Maelstrom that you get from your builders and your auto attacks. Now, the very most important thing is in every situation, you are pressing this button in Feral Spirits when it comes off cooldown. If it is up, you are pressing it, do not question it. Now, there are 5 builders in the Enhancement Shaman rotation. Important things about these builders. In AOE, Crash Lightning grants a 12-second buff that makes your other filler give more Maelstrom. You really want to keep this buff up. This is basically the highest priority. However, it is useless in single target. It is the absolute lowest priority in single target. Now, Fire Nova is the next highest priority in AOE. It grants you 1 Maelstrom for each target with Flame Shock up to 6. So it is your builder that grants the most Maelstrom. The only thing is you do need to spread Flame Shocks first. Now, apart from this, you have 3 other builders, and you generally want to press them in this order: Lava Lash, Ice Strike, Storm Strike. But this priority can be fluid, and it's not a hard prio, but for now, just go with that. Alright, now, when your Maelstrom resource reaches 9 to 10, you are spending above all else. It's very important to spend. You can also have a situation where you're at like 5 to 8 Maelstrom, and all of your builders are on cooldown. And at that point, you just spend with lower Maelstrom. You cannot spend with 4 or less Maelstrom. If you are on 2+ targets, you are pressing Chain Lightning. If you're on single target, you are pressing Lightning Bolt. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about Tempest. It is very important you understand Tempest. This is the entire point of your Stormbringer Hero Tree. Alright, so first of all, you need this Weakauras from Nick Yu. There is a setting where it ramps up. I like using this setting. Alright, so the main thing about Tempest is that every 40 Maelstrom you spend will give you the Tempest buff. And this makes your next Lightning Bolt cast a Tempest. And Tempest is a massive AoE and single target nuke. It gives you a Wolf, which is a stacking damage amp, and it makes your next 2 Chain Lightnings do more damage. Now, the most important thing about Tempest is that you have it early in any pack, because Tempest is creating these micro cooldown windows for you, and if you don't start a pack with a Tempest, you are going like 10 seconds doing no damage. So you need to have a Tempest early in a pack. You don't need to start with a Tempest, you need to have it early. Now, to achieve this, you want to be watching this Weakauras. You want to go into a pack with 30 or more stacks. If you have 20 stacks, it's fine. 10 stacks is bad, but it's playable. And 0 stacks is unplayable. You're not going to be doing any damage. I'll go over how to open a pull later in the guide. Now, here is some important pre-pull tech before you put the key in. These stacks persist on a key start. You press Ascendance, you press Wolves, and then you just press 3 healing surges with 10 Maelstrom weapon, and you'll be at 30 stacks, and you're good for the first pull. Now, there is also a mechanic at the end of the tree called Awakening Storms that stacks up, and it gives you a free Tempest at 3 stacks, but it's kind of random. You don't really have to worry about it. Just treat it as a free proc of Tempest that is random, and just be very happy when you get it. Now, the next thing we need to understand is Primordial Wave. This is very important. I see a lot of people do not understand this. So Primordial Wave shoots lightning bolts at your flame shot targets, which is capped at 6 targets. And when you cast it, it grants you a 15-second buff that activates when you press lightning bolt or Tempest. And in AoE, your goal is to always activate Primordial Wave with Tempest. Because 1, you don't want to be pressing a naked lightning bolt in AoE, you want to be pressing chain lightnings. And 2, it applies 6 lightning rods for 8 seconds. So if you're using a Tempest to go into this, you're going to have 2 arc discharge buff chain lightnings in this lightning rod window. So on a basic entry to a pack, you are pressing Wave, you press Crash Lightning for the buff, you Lava Lash to spread some Flame Shocks, then you are activating Primordial Wave with a 10-stack Tempest. You want to be pressing Chain Lightning as your spender until you have 40 stacks, and you're building and spending until you have a Tempest. If you started the pool with 0 stacks of this Tempest Maelstrom, don't bother with this, just send a naked Lightning Bolt into the wave. It's bad, you will do low damage. There is no way around it, other than playing better in the previous pool and coming out of it with stacks. So now you have started a Lightning Rod window. Alright, so now we have to understand Ascendance, and Ascendance is a bit of a complicated cooldown, and it's not very straightforward. Alright, so the purpose of Ascendance is that you're building a lot of extra Maelstrom during Ascendance. You gain 30 Maelstrom from the passive effect of static accumulation. It means you are pressing more spenders, so you get more spender damage, and you are progressing towards more Tempests. And then you are also overlapping 2 casts of Feral Spirits because you're generating so much Maelstrom, and you're getting a lot of dogs from Rolling Thunder. Because of this, the actual Ascendance window, even though it is a 15-second duration cooldown, you have a bit of a ramp up and then a drop off. So I would say Ascendance window lasts about 25 seconds. And if you get really lucky, you're going to have a point where you are sending spenders on like 7 or 8 lightning dogs, and this is a massive multiplier to your lightning damage. So the way you want to use Ascendance is you have activated your Primordial Wave, you want to go into Ascendance, you are looking at your Maelstrom weapon stacks. If you are at high stacks, like 8 to 10, you are still spending manually. If you're at like medium stacks, like maybe like 4 to 7, you just press Wind Strike and you spend with Wind Strike. And if you're at less than 4 stacks, you can press a normal builder, or you can also press Wind Strike. It doesn't really matter at that point. Now remember, you are always pressing Feral Spirit off cooldown, and you are always keeping the buff for Crash Lightning up on AoE. Alright, so here is a model opener for an AoE pool. So I'm going into the pool. As we're walking in, I press Flame Shock on some random mob, I click the prior mob, I press Dogs, I press Wave, I press Crash Lightning to get the buff up, and I press Lava Lash to spread. And then I press Chain Lightning, and now you can see I have Wave with the Tempest buff. I just press Fire over here to build up to 10, and now I send a 10 Maelstrom Tempest into the Wave. It hits every target with Flame Shock, so now I have a lot of Lightning Rods up. And from here, I will probably press Chain Lightning, I will use my dogs, and then I will go into Ascendance. And then from here, I am using a combination of Spenders and Wind Strike and just normal builders. And I'm getting a lot of resets here. This is pretty lucky. I'm getting a lot of Tempests. I have a lot of overlapping dogs that you can see. I didn't get that lucky with my dogs, so I only have 3 Thunder Dogs. And here I am getting stunned, which is quite unfortunate. But that is how you are meant to open up a pack. So now you should understand the things that are quite unknown from the new hero tree. You should understand how to use your cooldowns and your basic abilities. And I will say that Enhancement Shaman, it is a lot to take in, but it is not that hard. The way that Enhancement works as a spec is there isn't always a correct button to press. Sometimes the priority of builders changes. You can't always get your buttons 100% right, and a lot of the time you can just press random builders in any order and it's completely fine. There's a lot of things that can change the priority, such as your like Flame Shocks might be falling off, or you could have 2 Awakening stacks and want to proc a Tempest off of that. Or maybe you desperately need some extra Maelstrom, so you'll press Ice Strike because it gives the most out of all your builders. So I recommend just not stressing too hard about it. Just press buttons. As long as you're playing the Primordial Wave, the Ascendance, and your Tempest right, then you should be doing good damage. Now, in terms of Weakauras, you definitely need the Tempest Weakaura I mentioned earlier in the guide. I also recommend getting a Weakaura for individual Feral Spirits duration, and this is for each individual cast, so it needs to go off a combat log and it can't go off the buff duration. And I recommend getting a Weakauras for the number of lightning dogs active. These Weakauras will make it easier for you to press your spells in your windows and not out of them. And it is also very important to track the duration of your Primordial Wave buff and your Crash Lightning buff. Alright, so now I'm going to be going over some less important things that I didn't go over before. There are a few talents and abilities and procs that people keep asking me about or that people might not understand. So I'll go over all of these. So first, Hot Hands. Now Hot Hands is a buff that makes your Lava Lash cooldown massively reduced and makes it do more damage. When you have Hot Hands, you want to press Lava Lash as your best single target builder. However, you still need to keep Crash Lightning up on AoE, and Fire Nova still takes priority in AoE. Now the Storm Strike reset, which is also called Stormbringer, this is not relevant, ignore it completely. Now, Lava Burst, this spell is useless. You never want to press Lava Burst over any Lightning Spenders. Untalented Lava Burst, do not ever press it. Now, Frost Shock. Unbind this spell. This spell is terrible. When I have used this spell optimally in keys, it does 0.2% of my overall. You can actually untalent it. It is useless, do not press it. Alright, now Flame Shock. When going into a pool, you want to press Flame Shock before your wave so that you have 6 dots active, because Lava Lash will only spread to 4 targets, and if you don't press a Flame Shock beforehand, you'll have 5 targets with your Flame Shock rather than 6. Otherwise, if you don't have a Primordial Wave on pool, you'll press Flame Shock on pool so that the dot is up. Now, Lashing Flames. A lot of people hate this talent, Lashing Flames, and I can safely say you can pretty much ignore this for less than 1% damage loss. The only time I think it is relevant to play around this talent is on 2 targets, and even then, it is not that big. Now, Lightning Rod tab targeting. People are talking a lot about the Lightning Rod tab targeting. I recommend just ignoring it completely. Just blast the Prime Mob with all of your spenders. Like, it is technically better to be spreading your Lightning Rod to other mobs, but it's not a massive damage gain, and you will lose damage unless you know exactly what you are doing with it. So I recommend just not worrying about tab targeting Lightning Rod at all. Now, Arc Discharge. A lot of people ask me about the instant cast portion of Arc Discharge. It does not matter that they are instant, you just want to press them with Maelstrom because they do more damage. And you also don't need to spend them all, you can overwrite them with Tempest, you just want to press every Tempest you have on cooldown because it overlaps Wolves. An Arc Discharge is not enough of a multiplier to warrant you needing to spend them all in between every Tempest. Now, Awakening Storms, you can play around this. If you're at 2 stacks and 30 Maelstrom, you do want to press Storm Strike to force a proc. And if you have Tempest and 2 stacks of Awakening, you do not want to press Storm Strike because you do not want to waste a proc. However, it is random. It doesn't always work out how you want it to work. Now, on the topic of RNG, this build is definitely RNG. Each dog from Feral Spirits, if you get a Fire Dog or an Ice Dog, it is useless. So you can get like a God roll where your Feral Spirits give you 3 Lightning Dogs, and maybe you have a second cast overlapping that has maybe 2 Lightning Dogs. And then you get into this situation where you have like 8 Lightning Dogs, and it is a multiplicative buff, so it's a massive difference. However, even if you do get unlucky, you will still do decent damage, so it's more just like a high ceiling than like an RNG chasm where you can get really bad RNG and do no damage. That doesn't happen. Additionally, from static accumulation, every spander has a chance to full refund. And from your Hero Tree Supercharge, every spender has a chance to refund 3 stacks. So you have a lot of RNG and refunds, but again, it's a high roll and not a low roll kind of thing. Also, on the topic of other builds, people do ask me about other builds, like maybe like a Storm Strike build or just pure Elementalist, and I don't think any build compares to this. If you really wanted to, you could play something with a lot of Storm Strike talents and no Lava Lash talents, but to do optimal damage in M+, you need Fire Nova, you need Wave, and going into the Lava Lash challenge is simply just less talent point investment and more damage, and you have less stress about Flame Shock uptime. So I would recommend playing this build, but if you really want to play another build and you're not doing the absolute highest end content, go ahead. And apart from all of this, there are minor min-maxes that I did not go over that I don't think are relevant while you're still learning the spec. You will learn them with time. And as a final note, I want to say that I think Enhancement Shaman at the moment is the most fun DPS spec in the game. I know a lot of people are negative about it, and a lot of people are skeptical about this build, but I recommend not forming an opinion about it before you actually play it. It is very fun and also strong. And I know a lot of people find Enhancement Shaman overwhelming, but I think it is one of the most interesting classes rotationally. It's quite different from every other class.